What happened? Now, so I don't make no bones about it. I started playing CoD right around Modern Warfare 3. I hadn't played any of the previous titles because I just wasn't much of a multiplayer person. I just mainly played solo, and I didn't really get into multiplayer games. Didn't understand what the hoopla was all about. I played Battlefield 3 and Modern Warfare 3, or Warfare 3. Now, this is the title of what happened, and I'm not going to talk about the future stuff. I'm going to well, I'll probably talk a little bit about it because you can't talk about CoD without the jumping on walls and running on walls and all the other future shit. But let me tell you something. And I'm going to talk to you, and I want you all out there who are CoD fans and people who are not CoD fans, and my subscribers and people who are potential subscribers. Excuse me for the sneeze. I want to talk a little bit about what really happened to the series. There's several things that you can look back. A lot of people say it started with Ghost. Ghost had very big maps. It protected people it was more or less designed for camping, in power positions and stuff like that. And it was the first of the IEDs and they got rid of the UAV, and they have different things. And people said that it was just the beginning of the end because this is where the future stuff started, was with Ghosts. It went to Ghosts. Then we got your Black Ops, and we got your Advanced, and Black Ops 3, and then, your Infinite Warfare. And we never got the actual fifth game in the series that was going to be tentatively called, and mainly it was a rumor, Beyond Warfare, and it wasn't even going to take place on Earth. It was going to basically be kind of like Destiny in a way, I guess, if you want to say that. But anyway, I don't want to say that the future stuff is what ruined the game, because I don't think so. And I'm not saying this because I love the whole jumping on walls and all the other stuff. Titanfall 2 does it better. Titanfall 2 is a great game. You should pick it up. Now, what I'm going to talk about specifically, and I think people out there may agree, there's a couple reasons I feel like that CoD sales are down. Right before World War II came out, CoD sales were down around 43 to 45%. Half their player base was all but extinguished. And it just turned into not the big one-time game when it came out and hundreds of millions of people were playing it and hundreds of millions of dollars were sold on it. Now, here's the thing. World War II did sell really well. It brought back some of those old players, but World War II still did not sell as well as Modern Warfare 3, and it didn't sell as well as some of the other games in the early series. Now, it may have since surpassed that. I'm not really good on crunch numbers. I just look it up and then figure that's what's been going on, but a lot of times that changes. To be honest with you, I feel like what happened with CoD was a couple things. Number one, I think one of the problems that Infinity Ward and Treyarch both seem to not understand is that, they don't really have any competition in the shooter genre that plays and feels like CoD. You can argue and say, well, Battlefield is like its main competitor, but just because they're both military shooters does not mean they're the same game. Battlefield 5 has large-scale maps with real, actual physics like bullet drop, physics with the vehicles. It's a more realistic approach to war, even if you just play team deathmatch. It's fundamentally a different style of game. The time to kills are a lot longer, and in CoD, this is not the case. CoD doesn't really have any competition, and I think without competition, it breeds stagnation. Just look at the Madden series. Madden has nobody else is allowed to make any game that has the NFL license because they bought it up for so long, and it's a shame because we set the Wayback Machine when the last 2K NFL game came out, which was some time ago. It's kind of funny. I think in 05, maybe 06, but it's funny to me because that game came out at $20 and got better reviews than Madden and sold better than Madden that year, and EA just couldn't have that, and they bought up the license. And Madden has been consistently inconsistent since then. It's the same game pretty much every year with new features, some removed, some new, whatever. I don't feel like Madden's in stagnation. And that's what's one of the biggest things that's happened to CoD. No game plays like CoD, and nobody is wanting to put out any kind of arcade shooter style game similar to CoD because competition, But if COD really, Infinity Ward and Treyarch I think they would try to do their best and give their all. Kind of like the Monday Night Wars when Nitro, WCW was around, and WWF at the time was around. And they were both trying to one-up each other, and the shows were just absolutely over the top and amazing. Like, pro wrestling was pretty amazing then. Sucks now, but it's the same thing. They don't really have any competition. So I don't agree with the fact that the future route's what killed the series. I believe that the lack of competition. But there's another key and important ingredient when it comes to COD's dismal demise or its decline. And again, I don't think it has anything to do with them trying to rip off other games. Yes, Black Ops 4 is going to have some modes that play pretty much identical to Overwatch, but Overwatch is now the shooter king on that area, and of course you got Fortnite on the other spectrum, which is why we're seeing them in the games. I really feel that Infinity Ward and Treyarch both, they don't really understand their audience anymore. And it's not about the audience saying, hey, we want this, we want that, just put it in the game. That's not the case. I really feel like they know that because they have no competition, not only do they not have to listen to anybody, but they have lost sight of the target audience that they once had, of what they once, and took it for granted. They were like, they'll just buy it because it's COD. But it doesn't mean your game is good. And that's one of the things that I think has really been detrimental to the series. If you really stop and think about it, Infinity Ward has, and both Treyarch have both basically said, we don't really care. We're going to put it out and going to buy it anyway. Treyarch's doing a really bad thing with the season pass, where you have to spend $50. You can't buy anything individual that comes out after the main game. So if you don't buy the season pass, it's either all or nothing. And I think that is really weird that they went that route, considering the problems that happened last year and this year somewhat with the loot boxes and all that stuff that went on, where it was just, we just want your money. It's clearly them wanting your money. I think a lot is riding on this game for whatever reason for them to ask for that up front. Infinity Ward on the other end, it's great that they gave us World War II, but COD is still COD. It doesn't matter that I'm boots on the ground on that game and running around. I feel like it's a better game than Infinite Warfare, even though I do enjoy Infinite Warfare from time and again. It's still COD. It's still the same game I've been playing for years. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter with the wall jumping. It doesn't matter with the double jumping and all the crazy stuff that's in the other games. It's really the same COD. Because I feel like they don't understand their core audience anymore. There are kids now that are like, 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old. They don't know anything about the old CODs. There was kids out there that started with Advanced Warfare because they didn't know any better, right? They just don't know any better. So to them, that's the COD that they know. And they just figure that's how the game's always been. I would almost, because you can't really go back and play. I mean, you could go back and play World at War and Black Ops 1, but you're going to, and there might be people still playing them, but most kids are just going to go on forward and buy all the new stuff anyway, if you can get them off Fortnite for 30 seconds. But I feel like that Infinity Ward and Treyarch, just because of their lack of competition, they just don't understand their audience anymore. I don't even think they understand their demographic. And I think it's a real shame that COD has turned into this, when you've got other shooters out there, like Overwatch and stuff, that have come along and captured, the gaming world or community by storm. And if you really look at Overwatch from its base core, it's much more simple to play from a standpoint than COD. But the difference is with that game is in Overwatch, it's not about your KD or percentages. It's literally about characters, and sometimes you even have to die so that the team can win. It's very much, in many ways, an asymmetrical shooter. But and that's another thing. And I like asymmetrical shooters, but it's simplified to the point that anybody can pick up and play it. And I think the core audiences now have changed. COD. You don't need to change COD so drastically to try to say, well, this is what people want and compete with it. That didn't work for the last few entries. It just didn't. You know, Black Ops 3 with its futuristic stuff. Sorry about that. My microphone just decided to take a crap and decided to just not work for a second there. So sorry for the interruption. Speaking of interruptions, today's episode is brought to you by Beer in the Throat. So here's the thing. I do really feel like that. That they try to innovate when they didn't need to. So many CODs are so alike, it's like you'd think that they would say, you know, let's try to finesse the game. Let's take the good template we have, and let's fine-tune the shooting mechanic even further, right? Let's give them even more customization. Let's actually try to, instead of just giving people the same perks and rename them, right? Let's actually come up with some new and creative perks. Things that would be interesting, you know? Let's think about some of the interesting things that we can do and create instead of just renaming perks to do basically the same thing and calling it new. It really is sad that they just have forgotten what it's like to be innovative. And they were the innovators, but because of the lack of competition and the fact that they really don't know their target audience anymore, they don't really understand who's really playing the game, right? That now they're so desperate that they're actually, the next Black Ops literally has a battle royale mode in it, and the next and a 2 or 3 game modes that are identical to Overwatch's game modes. And that to me is sad. That because it just goes to show you, they know that their game is weak. They know this. They know it's not a very good game. They know that they're writing in the campaign. They took the campaign out. People were kind of butthurt about that. But if you go back and look at the campaigns, they're structurally all the identical. You know, some villain comes along, shoots you in the head, you survive, whatever the hell. And it's just, they're so similar to one another. They're almost copy and paste, COD after COD. And that's sad, you know. Yes, Battlefield is also having a Battle Royale mode, but it's basically like playing Conquest mode, but you can't respawn, you can build some stuff. I think Battlefield is more set up better for that kind of mode because the stuff's already there. The vehicles, the large maps, it's all there. COD is not. COD was never intended to be played this way. And they're just doing it, not necessarily just because of the trends. They know their game is weak. They would never do this in today's market if they knew their core gameplay, team deathmatch, you know, domination, those game modes that people play were really, really good. But see, they don't bother the finesse. And the funniest thing about COD is, years later, we're looking back, and it's so funny to me because they still are using a modified Quake 4 engine. They still won't create a new engine or update it to the point. Because if you look at World War II, it's not an ugly game, but it's definitely not a pretty game. Evolve looks way better than anything World War II can do. And even though they're very different games, but that's my point. They won't even bother to try to say, hey, let's build a new engine. Let's update this to the Unreal Engine, or let's update it to, you know, the Euphoria engine, or something. They won't. They keep using a modified Quake engine, and the reason they can is because it's all drag and drop at this point, and they can pump a COD out every 9 to 10 months. They're not even trying anymore. They've lost sight of their core audience. They don't really have anyone that competes with them. They know it and they don't care. At some point, though, I truly believe that COD's numbers, as far as sales and players, will dwindle to the point where there's very few people playing and the game will fail financially. Assassin's Creed by Ubisoft, and you know I give them a hard time all the time. They at some point looked at Unity and said, we can't keep pumping this shit out every 10 months. They waited 2 years, and we finally got Origins. And even though we did get Syndicate, but Syndicate was actually being made at the same time Unity was, so that's kind of funny that they coincided real close to one another. But, as I said before, they decided to wait, and they put out Origins, and they had a huge hit because they revitalized and changed the game for the better. They knew their players, the player base was gone, financially the game was not doing well. They went and redid the game in a way that was really interesting, exciting, even putting mythological stuff in there in Origins. And now we're going to get Greek mythos that takes place before Origins, and it looks really fascinating and interesting too, because it's going to be different. And that's what you need to do. COD, the people at Infinity War and Treyarch, just won't do that. To this, I have to say is that they just have no competitors, and they've lost sight of their audience, and that ultimately is what happened to CoD. It's the same thing that happened with Assassin's Creed, and they had to go back to the drawing board, and they fixed it. It's a much better game than it was. I do like playing Assassin's Creed Syndicate, but it's more or less the same stuff. A lot of map, too much busy work, give me a grappling hook, way to go, I can play as a chick, don't care. Like I said, it's basically the same stuff. I got it because it was cheap. But my point, and I love that London setting. I have a lot of games based in that setting. It's the whole reason I like the Order 1886 so much. It's the setting. But COD, at some point, as I was saying, is going to lose their player base. It's going to dwindle down to not 1 million players, but a few 100,000 players. It's going to lose their financial stride, and they're going to sit back and think, what happened? What did we do wrong? Well, what you did wrong was you stopped looking at your game and trying to innovate it and refine the mechanics that were already there. You just keep giving us the same shit day in and day out. I'd put money on it to say that when Black Ops 4 releases, we're going to... And you're giving us the same specialists without their abilities. But you're not even... You're going to give us the same perks. You're not doing anything except adding some game modes. You slowed it down a little bit, and now we can actually carry a healing pack. Oh, wow. Innovation. Hundreds of games have been doing it before. And that's the problem. They think they had to compete with other trends. But no, they're really only competing with themselves. And they lost sight of the big picture for their game and their core audience. This has been episode 101 on Season 4, talking about COD and what happened. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to my channel. Please hit that like button. And thank you for sitting at the Gaming Roundtable. Remember, I am the Juice Man, and I am the gamer that tells you the way it is. And as always, gamers, good gaming.